I know that I posted, I think last week, that I would have a video up of seed planting. Nothing around here has gone as planned. I say that laughing because that's all I can do. We are at the end of the main things that need to be done at the other house and getting it ready for move-in. And so what should have been spent doing planting has been spent trying to get that house ready and then just doing our normal day-to-day life here at the farm and things that have to happen. So the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and this last 2 weeks, the squeaky wheels have been everywhere but my garden. I was able to get onions planted, the little sets that I had bought, golly, back in February. I did get a good amount of those planted kind of on the edges and the border of that small garden space. And today I'm gonna go over tomatoes with you just because that is like the most pressing thing for me. So my goal this year was to start soil blocking. I have not had the extra cash flow to just buy the equipment needed for soil blocking. Ultimately, once you invest in that equipment, it's there for years and it's not a big deal. But right now, I'm gonna do what's easiest for me, what I know and what I already have, so that I'm not having to spend more money. And then next year, or even in the fall, that's potentially going to be a place where I invest. But right now, I need to get my tomatoes going because the plan is to have another workshop and a plant sale April 1st. And it is now almost March. So I'm not giving my plants a whole lot of time to grow, which is very disappointing. I should have had these planted that middle week, maybe first, second week of February. So these are not going to be the biggest tomato plants that I want, but I know that eventually if I don't sell them April 1st, I still can sell them closer to May. But I need to get them going. And once the sun is, and we've been having fake spring. I have a feeling it's February 23rd today. I have a feeling we will end up having another freeze before our final, last freeze date. And so I'm not set that this is our weather, but we've had really nice weather, really nice sunshine, 70 to 80 degrees. Right now it's super windy, so we're still dealing with weird weather, which is probably just the way the year's gonna go. So let's get started. I've talked to you guys before. I know this is not necessarily my favorite seed starting mix, but it is a seed starting mix that will work. And generally, I think it tells you, I'm not too worried about nutrients per se. We need to get the seeds started. Once they get those true leaves on them, I do give them a liquid fertilizer at half strength, just to kind of give them a little boost, and then I will work on potting them up. So potting them, these are 1-inch cells. I don't know if you can see, that's a 1-inch cell. I'm gonna pot up to probably a 3 or 4-inch pot as I'm trying to get those transplants ready, hardened off and ready to sell. But right now, we're just trying to get the seeds going, and I only have so much space under my lights, and so this allows me to grow quite a bit and start quite a bit of seeds before I'm able to actually start putting stuff outside. So that's why I've chosen the 1-inch. I will say, I know that some of those plants will need potted up and I'll need more space down the road. But I'm planting 2 of these. So one of these has 72 cells. I'm planting 2, what is that, 144? Because I plan on selling half of them at least. I don't know that I'm gonna have 72 tomato plants in my garden this year. I don't know that my garden is big enough, but I wanna have options. And then whatever I don't use, I can obviously sell or give away. So let's get started. We're gonna start with just getting our seed starting medium in here. I know plenty of people who use potting mix, and that's fine. Again, keep in mind some potting mixes are very dense and some are very woody, and neither of those things are gonna be as helpful in getting your plants to grow. So what I like about this, there's a lot of peat moss and perlite and things that will kind of keep the soil fluffy. Every now and then I'll get like a little stick, but not anything extensive. If you choose to use, I say that and I've got like that. If you choose to use potting mix versus the seed starting medium, which is your choice, I would get a sifter and sift through it. Again, I told you time is my greatest commodity right now. It's scarce with everything that I have to do, and so I'm gonna do stuff simply this year, not trying to learn necessarily something totally new in a process when I am trying to get a house ready to sell and trying to move. We are a family of 7, plus 2 dogs and a guinea pig, plus 7 cows, plus 20 chickens. So and like 4 or 5 guineas. I think we're down to 4 guineas. I just don't have the time or energy to do anything very special outside of this, and there's nothing wrong with doing things a simple way, and so that's what we're going to do today. So we'll get started. I have my seeds. My sister and I went through them. I went through them for a seed swap just because I know that this garden's going to be smaller and there's some seeds in there that I don't want to keep saving year after year. I'd rather than get used. But tomatoes are by far my favorite thing to grow. It's my favorite garden snack. So we have a few varieties. Texas allergies have definitely been acting up. Okay. So that's a beefsteak, celebration. Some of these are just very simple and I got them from the store. This is a sweetie. Dr. Witchy's from Baker Creek. Probably the best tomato I've ever grown, but last year was a really hard year and I was just sitting in here eating the tomato. I had picked it in the fall. We didn't get it. I think we got 1 or 2 in the spring, and then everything just didn't want to grow. It was too hot. The fall, when these started growing, by the time they were ripe, it was getting cold. So I had harvested a whole bunch of them, left them in here on the cabinet just to finish ripening. And my husband walked in on me eating, and I just had like tomato juice all over me. And he's like, how's it going? This is the best tomato I've ever had in my life. So I grew these last year. I plan on growing them again. I'm trying this company, Seeds and Such, because I couldn't actually find some of these seeds from other places, and they have quite the assortment. Some of the packets have 30 seeds, some of them have 5. So the climbing triple crop, because I really am hoping to make sauces this year. This is supposed to be a really good sauce tomato, so I do have 2 of those. The early dolls, they only came with 5 seeds, but they're supposed to have, they're supposed to come a little bit sooner than regular ones. So this is a sugary hybrid, chocolate cherries, Amish paste I tried to grow last year, Rutgers I tried to grow last year. Again, it was a rough year for them. The ones I did get were very, very good. I want to say I did not get as many Rutgers. The Amish paste that I did get, some of them I know were having like fruit end rot on them. So, you know, it is what it is. I got a lot of the Brad's Atomic last year. Various Crazy Cherry I got a lot last year. It was delicious. The blue cream was probably right up there with my most prolific, and I really like the flavor of these, and they have a really thin skin. So if you're somebody that doesn't really like tomatoes because the skin feels weird, this is nice because they just kind of explode in your mouth. They're very yummy. Midnight Snack is a hybrid that we've grown. We actually bought a plant a while back, I think from H-E-B, from our local grocery store here, and I loved it. I grew it in the fall, not this last year, but the year before, and they were delicious. So I'm excited to try those again. Kellogg's Breakfast, we've never tried, but I've heard great things. Chocolate Sprinkles, Costoludo Florentino. I just kind of liked, it's like a fluted heirloom. It's just a really pretty tomato, so I'm excited about that. We grew the yellow pear last year and they grew really well. The only thing I would say is when we had fluctuations in the weather, there's a little bit of splitting. I really didn't care. I'd still go pick them and eat them. But these and the blue cream were probably the ones that just kept producing. They produced, even when the rest of them had stopped producing, they were still producing. Micro Tom, I can't remember if this is what happens. I bought these a year ago. I want to say they're small, but I also think they could be porch tomatoes if you have patio tomatoes. Chocolate cherries. I did get a bunch of Roma tomatoes, again for sauces. I wanted to try something different. I have a friend here locally that she is just starting to garden, and she last year was able to grow tons of Roma. And we talked about determinate versus indeterminate. And for me, being able to do a paste or a sauce tomato, Roma's gonna be my best bet as far as like a determinate plant. This is the tomato sugary. I don't know what that one was. Brandywine, large cherry, sweetie, super sweets, and the mortgage lifter. So we'll see. I know I want to grow these. These are the ones I've been waiting on. I did want to show you something a little bit fun. So when I went to Lowe's with my mother-in-law, this is a tomato culinary blend, container variety. I don't know how, because I'm looking at some of these thinking there's no way. They have 70 days to harvest, so once we transplant them, you'd expect about 70 days till you get fruit. I don't know, like, I need to know what's growing in my garden. These are like surprise packets. Like, all of these are not gonna grow on one vine, so it's just a mixture of a whole bunch of seeds. This tasty blend is perfect for home gardeners and chefs. These delicious varieties are full of color and flavor. And they are, but again, I need to know where to plant these. Not sure if they're determinate or indeterminate, could be both. It looks like there's some really cool tomatoes in here. These were some that it looks like they were, a few people started them at the workshop when we did the garden workshop. But anyways, I don't know if I'm gonna plant, I don't know what I'm gonna do with those. I may wait till the fall to do those. But for now, I'm going to pick for sure. I need to get an idea. I need a lot of the Roma and the triple crop. Because my goal right now, as much as I want beautiful and delicious, I also really, really want to make sure that I'm going to have, there's a triple crop, that I'm going to have stuff that I can store for next winter, because we had nothing this year. And that really, that bothered me. Like, growing our food is one thing, but not being able to save or use our food throughout the year after all the time that I put into growing really bothered me this last year. So that's one of my bigger goals, is to be able to grow enough food that we actually can preserve some food to carry us through the winter. It may not fully fill up our pantry, but what it would do is allow some supplementary foods coming from our pantry that I'm not having to buy at the store. So that to me is top goal. So I buy these. I know there's so many other ways that you can label your plants. I'm kind of cheap about it, but I do buy these. I've reused a lot of them from last year. I will say, unless you have the right marker, the sun will cause it to fade. So I use this marker, I mark it, and I do in each of my little 6 things here, I will keep the same seeds. Now, when I go to pot up, I'll have to make more for the pots that go up. But for right now, quick and easy, trying to get the seeds started, I will just go through and label them, put the little seeds in, and then I'll come back at the end and sprinkle more of the, sprinkle more of the starting mix on top of them, water them in really, really well, get them under the sun, get them on the heating mats, get them under the lights and under the on top of the heating mats, and get things moving. So I'm at our current house today, but this afternoon I'm gonna go to the other house where I already have the other seeds going. Here we go. I know a minute ago, so I was talking about this culinary blend, and this is not something I would use as a brand new gardener, because most brand new gardeners are going to have a small amount of space and you're not sure what seeds are growing and what kind of tomatoes. I mentioned determinate and indeterminate. So when you read on your seed packets, a standout heirloom from the late Dr. John Witchy, the 1 pound glowing tangerine orange fruit is solid and smooth textured, tropical sweet taste, heavy yield, productive. Start indoors 6 to 10 weeks before last frost. Heat mat helps to warm soil and seed germination. Sometimes they say on them, determinate or indeterminate. These guys are in seed catalogs, so they usually will tell you. That was kind of dumb of me, but that one, this is a vining one. Some of them you'll have to read on the seed catalog, but when I ordered these, it usually will say determinate or indeterminate. Here. So for the Romas, which we know this about Romas, Romas are determinate with good leaf cover. These will grow and they will have a window of time when they will produce all of their fruit. They usually are considered bush plants. They're not vining. You don't need to trellis them. You may need to trim them a little bit here and there and prune them, but not the way that you would your trellised vining tomato plants. Dr. Witchy is an indeterminate, so it's going to produce and produce and produce until there's a reason for it not to produce. So either the temperatures are above 92 degrees, which causes the pollen to be sterile, so it will stop producing for that time, or a freeze, which kills back the plant. So indeterminate usually has a longer growing season, which is great if you're wanting these to make sandwiches with. This is perfect. This is perfect for salads. This is perfect for taking to dinners or making little, tomato or fruit or vegetable salads. But what it's not good for, and really my issue with some of the other like bigger tomatoes, if I'm wanting to use those for sauces or paste, I'm gonna have to grow a bunch of them and have a bunch of them growing, because they're only gonna produce so much every day. The window is long, but they're not gonna produce as much at one time. Whereas like the Roma, which is why I'm growing quite a few Roma tomato bushes, is to get a good production in a small amount of time so that I can harvest them and preserve them. So we talked a little bit about that at the workshop, but just make sure if you're ordering from a catalog, make sure that you read on there, is it determinate or indeterminate? Sometimes they'll tell you if something should be trellised or not, but more than likely, I would say indeterminate, you should be able to put that on a trellis. And for me, that vertical gardening is so helpful, because not only can I go in there, my mother-in-law, she is very agile for an 80-year-old woman, but it's right there at her face. She can grab the fruits straight from there, not having to sit down and try to grab and pick. And the bushes go out more, whereas the trellis I can cause to go up, and I can fit more plants in there. So I'm going to have a balance of both. It's an option for anybody. As you can see, I've got everybody labeled. I've pulled my seeds out. I did not end up doing a lot of these, which I may regret later. I know a lot of people, when they come to plant sales, they're wanting to buy the stuff that you can get at the big box stores. And so I just feel like this for me is the best way to go. I do have some chocolate cherries. My thought right now is that when I do the peppers and eggplants, I don't need as many as I do the tomatoes. So I probably will start 2 flats with tomatoes or peppers, eggplants, and then what I have left over, I'll do some more tomatoes in. You can't have enough tomatoes, right? So down in here, I started with Dr. Witchy. it's really up to you how you want to do this. And I have seen some of my favorite gardeners, they start theirs off actually in the flat. They just fill it with the soil and then they just start their plants. Like I could start a whole flat of Dr. Witchy's and just put one little label in there. And then as they grow into little tiny seedlings, very carefully separate them off and then put them in here. Again, I told you, things are stressful right now, so I'm going to do what I have to do to get by without spending a lot of extra time doing extra steps. But if this was a normal year for me and I wasn't moving and trying to do all the things, I would do that because I do feel like that would be a better use of space and time. But I don't have that luxury right now. So I'm just gonna take my little seeds. It's up to you how you do that. What I like about planting in the flats is I don't like wasting these seeds. These seeds were a little more expensive. They're heirloom seeds. They're fantastic. I had a really good germination rate with them last year to the point that I had so many plants I was having to call people and go, do you want some tomato plants? And I did have quite a few friends that were just very generous and sweet and said yes. So we'll see how that goes this year. But did I run out? Okay. I don't like wasting these seeds. Like it kind of breaks my heart. So, and I could, if I put 2 in each, which may be the smarter thing to do, I'm gonna consider it after I get all of them planted. I could go back and put 2 in each one, but again, I don't want to make extra work for myself. I think that's got to be my end point, is not making extra work for myself. As hard as that is, I love tomatoes. So I'll do that. And then once they're all done, what I'll do is just get a very light layer of this soil medium, the seed starting medium, and just pop it on there. And cover again, you don't want anything big. I have seen a gentleman that I actually really enjoy watching his videos when I first started out. He is in the UK. I want to say he's in Ireland. And he uses just a little bit of sand on them, and that just holds the seed in place so it can germinate. And that I would find helpful probably more with like flowers that need the light, and so you don't want to really cover them as much. I'm not quite as worried about it. So the reason I normally would wait until the whole thing is done is that I get distracted, and if I get up, I will forget where I ended. But if I leave the seeds just sitting on top of the soil medium and I have to get up and come back, I'm not going to be distracted. Well, obviously I'm distracted, but I will know where I stopped. Like if I stopped here, I would still be able to see the seeds. So that's what I'm going to do. I will kind of fast forward this for you guys. You can see the process, and then we will continue. Okay, so now everything is put together. I am just gonna sprinkle, I think I did it for that first row. I'm just gonna sprinkle a very light layer of this starting mix over my seeds. And then I'll get them watered in. Really, if I was being smart, getting the seed starting mix moist before you do this is probably a little more helpful, but the nice thing about these little flats is I can bottom water. So I fill the flats up with water from underneath, and then the soil actually acts like a wick and pulls the moisture up. And then right now what I'll do is also do like a light spray on top, and then just get them, like I said, under the lights and on the heat mats. And then most of these should germinate within a week, but I feel like a lot of them will actually germinate even sooner than that. But I feel like at a week I have a better idea of whether they're going to or not. So, and I did this really quick. This is not something, I mean, I've been doing this enough years that I can do it fairly fast. not as fast as you saw me do it. But also because I live a real life and I am a mom and I do work and I do have laundry and other things going on and the phone's ringing and I've got messages for my business and I've got messages coming and going. And so what I would say is that I've set up a process for myself that helps me with my weaknesses, which one of my weaknesses is I'm easily distracted. And so I think part of gardening in general, but also homesteading, anything that you do, I mean, I use this in my work life, outside of the homestead, is you have to figure out processes that are going to work for you, and what works for one person's not always going to work for you. So there is a lot of just experimentation and, hey, I did this year, next year I'm going to do it a little differently. And if you just really feel yourself getting into a slump, and I don't use that term loosely because I know it happens, but if you feel yourself kind of getting into a slump or like you're just not getting it, ask somebody for help. You're not the only person, I can assure you, that struggled with that. And there are some people that are really good at figuring processes out, and there are some people that we just need a little extra help. And so I watched a lot of people. I've asked a lot of people for help. I've had to ask a lot of people, well, how do you do this? Or how do you overcome this? You know, and when I can try different things and figure out what works for me, and also what works for you in this season, because what's working for me in this season is what I know has worked for me in the past. But in my mind, I also know that I want to do things a little bit differently. So I'm not in a season where that's going to be possible. So be realistic with yourself. Do not over plan or overcommit yourself to do things that you know you're not going to have time to do. If I had the time to do tomatoes in the flat like we talked about, I would do that, because I do think that's probably ultimately going to be a better use of time, space, and product. But right now, my balance is I don't have time. And I don't have time for multiple steps. And that to me would be a step I don't have time for, especially when I know in the next week I'm moving. And I have not just children, not just my own stuff, but I have chickens, cows, dogs, and a guinea pig to move. And so I have to be extremely realistic about what is happening and what we have to do next. So, okay, so the tomatoes are ready, other than I'm gonna take them over and just bottom water them. And then I've got my little sprayer. It's actually one of those bigger sprayers. That's what I have at the other house under the grow lights, and it's fantastic because I just pump it up and I just spray them really good, and I can feed them or water them from underneath. For the other plants, that'll be very helpful when I'm doing the fertilizer and stuff like that. So peppers and eggplants will be next, and then probably within the next week or two, I will plant a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit of squash. I will plant a few melons, and then we'll kind of go from there. I think I'm at a point I don't have space yet, but as I get the space put together, I'll go on and get a lot of the flowers, and I will get the radishes put into the new garden. So thank you for joining me. I'm sorry that this video is delayed, but I hope that it's helpful. Please, if you have questions, concerns, post them in the comments, but also make sure that you let me know, whether on this or on our Facebook site. Let me know what you're growing this year, or if you have questions. And just remember, if it's not on your seed packet, which sometimes they don't put it on, whether it's determinate or indeterminate, you can usually look that variety up on the internet. Go on the googly face, and it will usually tell you whether they're determinate or indeterminate. And so that may help you a little bit with harvest plans, as well as space in the garden where you should put them or whether you should trellis them. So just because sometimes they don't put it on the packet, it's still totally worth looking up just to have that ability to kind of plan ahead. So thanks for joining me. Tell your doggy I said hello, and we will see you guys soon for our next little planting lesson.